For two reasons. Once again, it confirms what I said at the beginning, that in the 19th century, the idea of revolution was influenced by the French Revolution, because the Jacobins were the most militant section of the bourgeoisie during the French Revolution, and like the Bolsheviks, they were organised as an elite, and they considered themselves superior in understanding to the ordinary people that they were trying to lead. But if the Bolshevik Party didn't represent the working class, who did they represent? Now, the answer to this, of course, is to solve the riddle of the Russian Revolution. Now, in this history of Russian Revolution, Trotsky, he ridiculed those who led the Soviets after the February Revolution until they were overthrown by the Bolsheviks. He said they represented not the working class, but the intelligentsia, and he called them petty bourgeois, and said that this explained why they sided with the big capitalists rather than with the working class, even though they called themselves socialists and regarded themselves as socialists. Well, there's probably a bit of truth in this, but what Trotsky forgot to add was that the professional revolutionaries of the Bolshevik Party were recruited from the same background, himself included. I mean, they too were members of the anti-Tsarist revolutionary intelligentsia, only they had adopted a different tactic for getting rid of Tsarism. No, not cooperation with the liberal bourgeoisie, but opposition to them, as well as to the landed nobility. Before 1917, they too had accepted that the only way forward for Russia was capitalism, and that the only anti-Tsarist revolution was possible would be a bourgeois revolution. Only their analysis was that because the Russian bourgeoisie was so weak, so dependent on foreign capital and even on the Tsarist state, they wouldn't be able to carry this out themselves, so they'd have to fall onto some other group, which they said in their language was the working class and the peasantry, led by a vanguard party of professional revolution, so they'd have to carry it out themselves. Now, whether this is ironic or not, this is what did happen in 1917. The Bolshevik Party used the conspiratorial organizational forms and tactics which they'd originally drawn up to overthrow the Tsar, to overthrow the provisional government, the bourgeois provisional government, and to seize power itself. I don't think we can really call this a bourgeois revolution, since they did kick out and expropriate the Russian bourgeoisie or capitalist class, but this didn't alter the objective fact that capitalism was the only way forward for Russia, and that any government of Russia would have to accept this and to promote the development of capitalism there in one form or another, which of course is what happened. And it was Lenin, not us, who was the first person to say that his government was pursuing a policy of state capitalism. But what I want to suggest is, I think, the best term to describe the Russian Revolution, as this is the whole period from the overthrow of the Tsar in February, March to the seizure of power by the Bolsheviks in October, November. The best term to describe it is a state capitalist revolution. I mean, it shared with the classic bourgeois revolution the feature of being a revolution that overthrew an outdated political and social regime that was proven to be an obstacle to the further development of capitalism, and also shared the characteristic of being a minority revolution, or rather a majority revolution led by a minority, and for the benefit of that minority. People power overthrew the Tsar, but 18 months later, the minority organised in Lenin's vanguard party of professional revolutionaries reaped the fruits. But as I said, this has been the feature of all past revolutions, all revolutions up until now. In any event, the way the Bolsheviks seized power in November 1917 was exploiting the popular discontent over the war, over shortages, and the land question, to gain a following, and then conspiring to seize government power themselves was not a model to follow us. I mean, all the speakers are going to explain. I mean, the social revolution can only be a majority revolution carried out democratically with the participation of voters, which didn't happen in Russia in 1917. So, over to you, who's going to be the chair.
Any questions?
I think one telling fact about the Bolshevik Revolution is that when you compare it with our attitude towards revolution, in which we talk about the democratic action of the majority of the population based on socialist understanding. If you look at the elections to the Constituent Assembly and the results of them, which I think were announced in January 1918, it turned out that the Bolsheviks only had about 25% of the vote. That the SRs were the vast majority of the delegates who were elected to the Constituent Assembly. What did the Bolsheviks do when they found out that result? They decided to disband the Constituent Assembly. And so that single event, although there are many others, shows quite clearly that they were along completely different lines in their attitude towards revolution from the attitude that we adopt.
I mean, they would argue, and it might be true, that they had a majority in St. Petersburg and in Moscow, and that if you had a majority there, that was sufficient to control the country. But once again, this was the same parallel that would be with the French Revolution. It had a majority, definitely in Paris, and that was the centre of power. And if you controlled that, you had a good chance of controlling the whole country. But on this question of the Constituent Assembly, the provisional government had, the original aim, if you like, for all the anti-Tsarist revolutions would go with the Tsar, have a provisional government, then elect a Constituent Assembly to decide the future constitution of Russia. But the provisional government delayed itself calling elections to the Constituent Assembly. And then the Bolsheviks raised the slogan, and others, elections to the Constituent Assembly, elections to the Constituent Assembly. And of course, as you say, when they took place, it was after the Bolsheviks had seized power. And once they seized power, they were not going to hand back after they got all that trouble. But I mean, that's been a feature of all anti-feudal capitalist revolutions. A minority seizes power and uses it dictatorially, despotically to deal with any opposition to any counter-revolution, if you like. Whether you could say it was a counter-revolution because the Mensheviks and others, what they wanted, argue whether it was realistic or not, was a democratic republic, in which they would obviously be the minority because the working class is the minority. They would use the democratic republic to develop trade unions and a socialist political party and so on and so forth. But I mean, that was never tried. It was never on the agenda in the end.
Just one other brief point, and that is when you were talking about the Bolsheviks would argue that they had control of the Moscow and Petrograd Soviets. I mean, that is an argument that the SWP and Trotskyists often use, isn't it? That the Bolsheviks did have a lot of support in the two big cities of Russia, but the thing is that the population of Russia at that time, about 80% of the population was living in the countryside as peasants, and the working class only comprised about 20% of the entire population. So if you look at things on a nationwide scale, there were plenty of Soviets where the Bolsheviks had no majority at all.
But Lenin knew perfectly well. He read his Marx and books about capitalism and things.